Hey Soup, it's Claytano. Welcome back, you guys. Appreciate y'all tuning in. So today we're going to be going over the basics of ruining a nuke or damage dealer type monster, and it's going to be just that. It's a little bit basic baby back bitch, but at the same time I think it's going to help a lot of the new players, as well as maybe give some insight to some of the more experienced players and things you might not know of already. So first off, when you're ruining a nuke or damage dealer monster, you want to think of three main things, okay? The first one is your speed and how fast the monster is going to be, how much crit rate he's going to have, and then how much crit damage he's going to have. So those two are together. And then if he needs any special set on him, like Will, Nemesis, Revenge, you name it. The first most important thing, does he need a special set? So if he's in a comp or a composition like with Will, say he must have Will to work in your composition, like some of my other arena videos, you could check those out. All of my monsters need Will. So if you're running a nuke to match that, he's gonna need Will at all costs. That's the single most important thing, because if he doesn't have Will, he's gonna get stunned and he's not gonna be able to do any damage and he's useless, okay? So you need to have that. Okay, then the next thing you need to think about when ruining a nuker is how much speed does he need to have? Okay, so when you look at your other support monsters, because nukes need support. Most of the time they can't do it all by themselves, so they need somebody like Galleon, they need somebody like Bernard, they need somebody to boost them to give them even more damage. Because if just by themselves, they're not going to do the damage that you're looking for. So they need to be speed calibrated with those support monsters in order to maximize their potential completely. Okay, so when you look at your Galleon, when you look at your nuke, you want to make sure that your Galleon is attacking before your nuke monster, so that way he can have an attack boost or a defense break before your monster goes. And that's the same with any other type of defense breaker or attack booster, like even Chase Soon, or say anybody. You need to make sure that they're speed calibrated first and foremost, or actually second and foremost, after getting their set on Will. Okay, so after they're on Will, after they're speed calibrated to your support monster, then you need to think, okay, I need to have crit rate and crit damage. Now crit rate and crit damage are going to be on the 4-slot rune, so it's either going to give you crit rate percent or crit damage percent. It does have some other ones like attack HP and some flat stats, but you want to make sure that you're utilizing the opportunity that you get to use crit rate and crit damage on your 4-slot rune for your nuke monsters. It's the best type of rune for that slot, okay, hands down. Okay, now for your 2-slot rune, if you can get your speed to where it needs to be with your support monster, you can go attack percent on this rune. You don't have to go speed on this rune. You can go attack percent, and that's perfectly fine. But you need to make sure that the speed matches. If the speed doesn't match, then it's okay to go speed slot 2 to boost that speed up to match your nuke, or to match your support as much as possible, because the less of a gap that you have between your support monster and your nuke, the less of a chance that you're going to have where the other team is going to be able to cleanse or break up that combo that you don't want to happen, because you want to be, you want to be quick on it. Okay, and for speed, if you have your monster set up with like a Bernard, where he's going to be boosting your attack gauge by 30%, you want to make sure that your nuker is 70% of what Bernard's speed is, so that way he doesn't get broken up. And it's the same thing if you do it with Megan. Megan only has a 20% increase of attack bar, so you want to make sure that your monster is 80% of what Megan's speed is, so that way they don't get broken up between going from Megan to your nuker. Okay, so that's speed calibrating. And then for the let's go back to a nuke here real quick. All right, so for the 6-slot rune, you almost always want that to be attack percent. There's really nothing else that's going to be better than that. There's attack, HP, resistance, and accuracy. Don't do it. Get those stats from other subsets if you can, afford it. But you're gonna want to go attack percent on slot 6. Okay, and so once you have that down, some things to think about when you're runing for crit damage or crit rate between deciding whether you want to use crit damage or crit rate on your 4-slot rune is, can I get enough crit rate through my 1, 3, and 5-slot runes where I can go crit damage on slot 4. That's the better one. If you can do crit damage, that would be better than crit rate. If you can't get the crit rate through your other runes, then go with crit rate on slot 4 and try to get as much crit damage through your 1, 3, 5-slot runes as possible to match. Okay. Now, when you're deciding between whether it's a single target nuke or an AOE nuke, crit rate is a lot more important on a single target nuke, like say my RAN for instance, because if you think about it, if it's a single target and your RAN hits one time, most of the time it's just, if you miss a crit rate or if you miss a crit on a monster when you're attacking, it's gonna hurt a lot worse than it would for say an AOE type monster like Lucian. So having it as close to 100% crit rate as possible on your single target nukers is key, because when it misses, it hurts so bad. Where it's not as important on your AOE monsters, because if they can kill at least 2 or even 3 monsters and then happen to miss crit the 4th one, they're still doing their job. They're taking out a lot of monsters, and that's their job. That's what they're there for. So it's not as important, but if you can get them as close to 100%, then by all means do it for sure. But it's not as important, so keep that in mind as well. Now, when you're trying to decide between rage, violent, whatever else, the main thing you want to think about is, am I trying to kill this monster on turn 1? If that answer is yes, go with rage, because you don't care if you violent proc, because you're a one-hit wonder. Like Lucian is a one-hit wonder. If he has all of his amputations hit, he doesn't really have another nuke skill that's gonna do as much damage as that amputation magic. He has a second AoE, he has his first skill, but for the main part, he's doing all his damage from his first skill. So if he violent procs, it's not as important. So that's why a lot of people rune Lucians on rage. Whereas as far as Xerath goes, a lot of people put him on violent. The reason why is because he has his AoE skill that removes all the all the skills, that. But then his second skill also does a crap load of damage, and you want to get him move into his third skill again as soon as possible. So in that case, he's most of the time not going to be trying to kill the target on the first turn, but a lot of people do use him on rage still. So look at your monster, decide whether you're trying to get him dead on the first turn, or if you want to have just a little bit to lay back on just in case, and go violent. Those are the two main ones for nukes. If you do want to put it on say fatal, that works as well. I have nothing wrong with that. And despair is always a good thing for AoE type nukes, so that way they can stun the monster as well. That's if you don't have rage or violent first. Okay, now there are situations where you want despair first, like if you want to put it on your first Lucian that goes, so that way the second Lucian has less of a chance to get interrupted if you stun a couple. But for right now, the basics: use violent, use rage. Decide between those. If you can't have anything because you don't have the right runes to match up the correct crit rate, crit damage, and speed to where you need it to be, it's okay to do something like this. Okay, it's really, really ugly, I know, but at the same time, it kind of goes back to, I needed will on this monster. 100% needed will. Could not go without it. Couldn't. it had to have will. Okay. Second off, it needed to have the speed in order to keep up with my Galleon and my Zeros for my AO. Without this rune at 20% or at 20 speed, that's not happening. So when I looked at my violent runes, when I looked at my rage runes, I was like, man, this is, I can't do this. I can't do this with the runes that I need. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna make a decision. I'm gonna go all offset for now, and then farm for other runes that can replace them, either rage or violent. I would love to have him on rage or violent, trust me, and have crit damage slot 4 instead of crit rate. Even though he is on all these offset runes, since I put him on crit rate slot 4, I made sure that I was getting as much crit damage from my other slots as possible, okay? So like 20% crit damage, this one had 24% crit damage, this one had 8% crit damage, and this one had 11. So that's why he's still at a decent crit damage at 124%. But I love having 100% crit rate on my monsters that I use for my AO because I love the consistency of it. And the reason why I use Tosi over, say, Lagmaron or even another Lucian or, you know, Sigmarus or any of these other AoE nukers that I have is because he doesn't glance. And if I waste that and say, okay, I'm gonna put you at 70% crit rate where you're gonna miss crit on at least one of those monsters, you're not doing your freaking job, man. Like you're doing the exact opposite of why I ruined you in the first place, because you're a light monster that you don't miss your crits. So that's why I made sure I had him at 100% crit. But eventually later on down the road, I do want to switch him over to Rage or Violent. Okay, but that's the main thing. Again, just recap real quick. Match your speed. Make sure you have your special sets in place first and foremost. Make sure you got attack percent or speed on slot 2. Make sure you got crit rate or crit damage on slot 4. Make sure you have attack percent slot 6, and then fill in the blanks with these. Don't think that you have to go with Rage. Don't think that you have to go with Violent. You can have great success without having those slots or those sets built in, because the common mistake is to build that way and say, this is my Rage set, this is the best Rage set that I have, and I wish that this rune was Rage as well, so that way that it could fit into that position. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. That's what I'm here to tell you. It does not have to be Rage. It doesn't have to be Violent. It can still work with just offset runes like this. Okay, that's it. Hopefully, I know this is kind of more of like a beginner type video, and I'm not sure if I mentioned it before, but real quick, on slot 3 here, there's no such thing as attack percent on slot 3, so utilize that to get as much crit rate, crit damage, and speed as possible from that rune as you possibly can, so that way you don't have to worry about attack percent on those substats. Attack percent is kind of a luxury. Don't worry about it too much on the substats. If it's there, awesome. It's a bonus. Okay, that's all it is. But there's no attack percent on your slot 3, and just to prove it, I can't even put it on there after the fact with an enchantment stone. It doesn't let you, right? I can't use the attack percent. It just won't let you. So utilize that, take advantage of it, know that it's not going to be there, and then make sure when you're looking for runes, when you're going through dungeons, looking for the runes that have crit rate, crit damage, and speed on that slot, so that way you can get something that looks like that, right? Awesome. Anyway, hope you guys liked this video. Hope it helped. If it did, please comment, let me know. Also like it and subscribe. And I'm going to be doing other videos like this as far as like how to rune tanks and things like that. But that's the general idea. I know it's basic. Hopefully it helped though. Appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time. Alright, bye-bye. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. If you want to see my previous video, you can click on the link or visit me on Facebook, Twitch, Instagram, and Twitter. Also, I just started making t-shirts, so check out my website at www.claytano.com to see all of my gamer-inspired apparel. And as always, stay soupy and don't be a potato.